I first met him in a hotel bedroom. He had come to the Randolph to see the picture I had painted from one of the photographs in his book First Childhood. The photograph showed a little boy dressed in shaggy goatskin with a macaw perched on his shoulder. Round his waist hung foxes' masks and the skins of little weasels. He carried a gun and the bloodhound lay at his feet. In the background loomed a classical fountain, a leering old man spitting exuberantly into a marble basin. This was the photographer's romantic touch. One could see where the backcloth joined the floor. He came with a bouncing step and sank down on the bed in front of the conversation piece I had made. I thought as he sat there that he bore a very faint resemblance to Humpty Dumpty. He immediately produced a little gold box and began furiously to take snuff. I was not offered any, and I cannot yet decide whether this was rudeness or true politeness. "It's perfectly charming," he said in a sort of amused, indulgent voice. I began to ask him questions about the clothes and his own colouring at the early age. "My eyes are still brown, but as you can see, most of my hair seems to have flown." We laughed together, as if decay were all a joke. Between pinches of sniff, little suggestions for alterations and additions were made to me. I wrote the sensible ones in a notebook. Time went on, and still Lord Berners sat in front of the picture. I felt that he had done his duty, and that now he could either leave or ask me how much I wanted for it, and then leave. I was longing for him to say that he wanted to buy it, and yet I dreaded it. I need not have worried. "You'll let me have a photograph when you've finished it, won't you?" he asked earnestly, looking at me. He rose from the bed at last, about 3/4 of an hour gazing. "Oh yes, of course," I said gaily, feeling rather miserable. Lord Berners' eyes roved around the room. He looked at my ivory-topped bottles and brushes, and then at my squalid little face flannel. It was tinged round with roses. I had found it on the toe of my Christmas stocking 7 years ago, and had used it ever since. His eyes came to rest on the bedside table, where several books lay. I had purposefully hidden his Far from Madding War under an old volume of Pope's Pastorals, which had been bought for 2p. It seemed too fulsome to leave his book about bare and uncovered. Again I need not have bothered, for he smashed out immediately. "What did you think of it?" he said urgently. "I enjoyed it awfully," I said, quite untruthfully. I thought it a trivial little book. "I'm so glad." He seemed to relax after my answer. I felt rather ashamed for giving him pleasure. I've got more coming up before Christmas," he added with busy pride. And I understood, for I knew how easy it was to appear childish in one's enthusiasm. "Will you write in your book for me?" I asked. "Yes," he said eagerly, "but I haven't got a pen." I lent him my stylo. He held it too slantingly and could not make it write well. He began in big letters, "Denton, Welch, with good wishes from Berners, Oxford, 1941. The Berners was extra large, much larger than the Denton Welch. He looked at the spidery lines and, shaking his head, said, "It's not my writing." We went into the passage together. It was wide and long, and as we turned a corner a door stood invitingly open. Lord Berners gave me one sidelong glance, and he looked at the shining convenience in the little room and found it irresistible. I wonder if I might make use of this," he said smilingly, with the very faintest tinge of embarrassment. He hurried forward with little bustling steps and locked himself in. As I waited for him, I thought, now the perfect host would go into the other compartment, for there were two together, and would there noisily pull the plug just to keep his guest company. But I did nothing. He came out again, and we walked down the Gothic staircase to the hall. "Isn't it an extraordinary hotel?" Lord Berners said. "John Betjeman loves it." "Yes, I imagine he would," was all I could find for an answer. We walked downstairs, looking at all the rooms. He wanted to show me one in particular, which he remembered. Rather undressed waiters told us where the bar was, and looked at us curiously, wondering why we were loose in the rooms, which were closed for cleaning. I thought that Lord Berners felt annoyed with them for not recognising him as anyone in particular. We went up to the swing doors and were swallowed up and separated, each in a little glass case. I stood on the stone steps and shook his hand. "Goodbye," he said. He put on his black hat, which accentuated the fact that he was wearing a shirt of tiny black and white checks. I watched him trotting down the pavement. He looked like a busy, useful Easter egg setting out on its daily rounds, and I felt lonely.